Today's big question: is the National Health Insurance Scheme dead? Well, we'll hear the answer from the horse's own mouth.
The past 4 weeks or so, almost every week, we get at least one letter from the Attorney General's office. Somebody has sued somebody with problems with care, service delivery, and they want us to come with information for them to go to court with.
You heard the man. Also, we'll be hearing from experts and from you. Also, what is the state of the Ghanaian media today? An interesting report reveals all. And, of course, on top of details of this new report, which has been launched today, we're also going to be hearing from experts on that issue. Also, let's find out why this woman is swimming the whole length of the Volta Lake.
I started in the northern regions of Ghana, so I started swimming in the Black Volta from a town called Wipe, and then from there swam through the Black Volta to where the Black and the White Volta meet.
Rather her than me. But there's a lot of detail for us to get through, so let's get started. You're welcome. This is The Pulse. My name is Kojo Yankson. It's a pleasure to be with you. Now, Ghana's National Health Insurance Scheme was established in 2003 through the leadership of President John Agyekum Kufuor to help deal with the problem of cash and carry within the health systems of the country. Now, it was welcome news for many Ghanaians who had either lost family members or resorted to self-medication for ailments requiring expert care. The introduction of the NHIS brought hope, with many expecting to access quality healthcare regardless of whether they had cash readily available or not. But yesterday, the man responsible for making this scheme work, the health minister, delivered the most damning verdict on the NHIS. We'll be learning more. A new law, Act 852, which replaced Act 650 in October 2012, to consolidate the NHIS, remove administrative bottlenecks, introduce transparency, reduce opportunities for corruption and gaming of the system, and make for more effective governance of the scheme. So how exactly did we end up where we are? Let's hear from some users of the scheme who shared their experiences.
I've been coming to the hospital at Kolebu, and the National Health Insurance, only the thing that it covers with is the visitation, only the visitation. I have to pay for the lab and the scan and those things. That's the only thing the National Health Insurance does.
I have NHIS, and when I go to hospital, it only covers my payment of the hospital bill. So the NHIS, it doesn't cover my medicine.
Bedro bia na meton health insurance nin cover. Inti mitua, say mitua, everything. Yetua health insurance crown cover. Bibia.
I have a national insurance card. The other time I was here and I went radiotherapy. The amount I paid, in fact, I don't know where stand the insurance card. So I don't know if it is working or not.
Right, so Kofi Asante joins us with all the data you could possibly want on this issue. Rather strange development, the minister himself admitting that things are not the way they should be. How do the numbers look?
Well, so we've been looking at the NHIS, the enrollment so far, right from 2017 to 2023. And then you could see an upward, adjustment in terms of the trend. But one worrying thing is that we are talking about finance. It's one of the reasons why the NHIS is under this kind of, stress it is at the moment. But day in and day out, we have this levy that we pay, which is the National Health Insurance Levy. Yeah, and then we check the data. We realize that on average, we get about, 3 billion every year. On your screens right now is the total NHIS enrollment in millions. So just look at what we have in 2017, where we had 10.6 million of Ghanaians enrolled on the NHIS. And then in 2022, as of September, the number actually increased from 10.6 to 15.2. And in 2023, we are hoping to end the year with an enrollment hovering around 20.3 million. So we are 31 million people, but we are expecting that we have about 20.3 million people on the scheme. But the question you have to ask yourself is, you have this total number of people on the scheme, but do they really get the kind of support they need when the state is raking in, or how do you call it, getting about 3 billion cedis every year from the NHIL, levy? You ask yourself, do people really get the kind of support they want? One other, trend that we saw that was very interesting was the fact that if you look at the coverage, the NHIS coverage right from 2013, it was on an upward trajectory up until, somewhere around 2015 that it started dropping. And you can see that U shape on your screen where it dropped from 2015 down to 2018. Then right after 2018, we saw the coverage increasing from somewhere around 36% to what we have the projected. We are projecting that it will cover more than 50% of the population. So on your screen right now is the NHIS coverage. That's the percentage of the population actually on this scheme that we're talking about.
So it's on the incline at the moment. It's going up. Yet the funds don't appear to be.
So if you can show the graph on the funds, that would be an interesting one to look at. If you can find, the exactly. So if you look at the NHIS expected revenue in $1 billion, this was what I was talking about. And so in 2017, we were actually able to raise about $1.4 billion from the
Ghana
scheme.
cedis?
Exactly, sorry, Ghana cedis. And it's been on an upward trajectory. So we get all these money. So now let's do some small calculation here. So 2017 to 20, if I should do a rough estimate, and that should be more than some $15 billion Ghana cedis that we are talking
about. From 2017
to 2023. So on average, we get close to 3 billion Ghana cedis from this scheme. But we ask ourselves, are we really getting the benefits that we set out that this levy should do? Maybe because of the deficit we have, where almost everything we raise is being used to service debt. We are a country where we use about 40% of our total revenue to settle debt. So you ask yourself, if you pay workers compensation, which is around 30 billion or 36 billion Ghana cedis, you service your debts around 32 billion Ghana cedis, and you add these two, you are actually truncating about 50 or 60% of your revenue. How much is there left to do roads, to support people who are on the scheme, and then also to do other things? So it's a very worrying situation, Kojo.
No doubt about it, especially bearing in mind that a specific amount is collected from the taxes we pay for this purpose. Thank you so much, Kofi, for giving us quite a broad picture of what's going on there. Now let's get some detail of the exact comments made by the finance minister, forgive me, by the health minister. Ohiming Teria is with our health desk. He sat through the senior managers meeting in Kumasi. He joins us right now via Zoom. Ohiming, you sat there, you heard the finance minister declare the state of our NHIS. Now, how exactly are the health professionals there taking the information given by the health minister?
Thank you, Kojo. I think this is not new to the health professionals who gathered at the Lancaster Hotel for the first ever 2023 senior managers meeting for Ghana Health Service. For them, it was just perhaps a continuation of the discussion on the state of NHIS in the country. Earlier before the minister mounted that podium, there were concerns from representatives of CHAG, and their issue was that NHIS, if you look at the tariff regime, it did not take into consideration how utilities, cost of utility could be factored into that, and that facilities were bedeviled with high cost of utility tariffs, and many of the facilities across the country were being disconnected. Then there was a rebuttal from the head of monitoring and evaluation from NHIA, Dr. Asensobwadi, who said, if you look at how the NHIS tariffs are structured, there's indication, or there's a bit of the tariffs that takes care of utility bills and all that. So he asked all the facilities to pay attention so that they will be able to raise enough funds to cater for their utility cost. And then when the health minister, perhaps was the last speaker to speak at yesterday's event, he is the only person to have opened the lid on that can of worms, hitting the issues as they were. He didn't mince words. At the point, I could see that he was very distraught, talking about the fact that people had to queue in his house and his office, and he having had to sometimes turn some of the people away because he's spoken to some of them beneficiaries, and the response is that some of them were being asked to pay for services that are supposed to have been covered under the health insurance scheme. For instance, he mentioned cesarean section, which should have been covered by NHIS, but according to him, in some instances, it costs about 1,000 Ghana cedis. So the poor beneficiaries are the ones who are being asked to pay. So in his own words, he described this situation as extortion from the health facilities. And so he asked Ghana Health Service, especially the top managers who had gathered at that meeting, to fashion out strategies to deal with this issue. So it's something that the minister was very, very passionate about. But from the health professionals, all of them sat, quietly and listened to the minister. And there are instances where some of them laughed, especially when the minister said he and other colleague MPs regret being MPs because of the burden, associated with the work. People have to queue in your homes and offices asking for monies and funds to pay for medical bills and all that. So for them, few of them that I spoke to are aware of the issues at NHI, just that they've been managing the situation for now.
Now, the president appointed Kojo Yankson as health minister and explained to the nation that his choice was because of Mr. Yanksan's finance background, which he said would help manage the situation at NHIA. That was the specific reason why the president chose him. Did he give any indication of a solution that he had for the current ailments?
For me, it was just a situation that the minister was aware that this is really what was happening at NHIA, and this was really what was happening to the scheme. So he made reference to the top managers, because the meeting, I must say, is a gathering of all the stakeholders in health. When you talk of health in Ghana, we have the health minister, some directors and some officials from the ministry. There are some officials from World Health Organization, and a lot of organizations, mentioned CHAG, mentioned National Ambulance Service, and all the big men who matters when it comes to healthcare, policy, and this enactment. So for him, he referred the matter to them that we are all aware of this situation. So what can we do? What can be done to save the situation so we don't overburden the poor subscribers or the poor healthcare, seekers, people who go to the health facilities in search of healthcare. So for the minister, he didn't talk about what he was going to do, but rather said he has trust and confidence in all the people who have gathered. So he brought the matter on the table for everybody to have a bite of it. So for the minister, I think perhaps maybe after this interview, we will want to speak to him and see how he intends to solve this problem. But as far as that meeting was concerned, the minister asked all the stakeholders to judge or to bring ideas so that they could bring some finality to the issue of extortion, in must say in inverted comma, at the National Health Insurance Authority.
Thanks for that, Ohiming. Let's now bring in Dr. Thomas Anaba. He's Executive Director of the Africa Center for Health Policy, Research and Analysis. He joins us via phone. Dr. Anaba, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Good afternoon, and afternoon to your cherished listeners.
Good afternoon. Now, you used to be the medical director at Ridge Hospital, Greater Accra Regional Hospital. How exactly did we get to this point where patients now have to pay for basic health care, which should be covered by a health insurance system that we're all paying for?
Thank you very much for the opportunity to contribute to this topic. I think, in summary, it is part of the gross mismanagement and the inappropriate disbursement of government funds to entities that are supposed to get pushing money to wrong places and making the health insurance to suffer. Remember, this minister was appointed with the backdrop that he's a good accountant, he's worked at NHI before, and that he was coming to resuscitate the national health insurance from the debt that it was engulfed with. He came and promised in April 2017 that by August, they will clear all the debt owed service providers, and we all clapped for him. Little did we know that he was rather going to mess up the health insurance system in the country. The first thing he did was to appoint more deputy directors to the authority, drawing salaries and other things. The other thing was to apportion some of the NHIS money to pay nursing training allowance that some of us kicked against. You don't take money for patients, services provided to patients, to pay nurses in schools. They took some of the money to give to parliamentarians to act as PROs for the national health insurance. We kicked against it, but everybody was quiet. It continues. The most important thing that has made the NHIS not to be functioning well is the refusal of the finance minister to transfer money collected in the name of national health insurance as taxes to the authority. The law states that the minister must transfer money collected or all taxes collected in the name of NHIS to them 1 month after that and report to the parliament every 6 months about how the money has been dispersed and then the rest. Since this minister came and the finance minister came to power, this has never happened in Ghana. We have called several times for this to be done, but it all falls on deaf ears. Characteristic of this government not paying heed to any call from CSOs, concerned Ghanaians, and listening to the plight of Ghanaians. So we keep mounting a lot of pressure on hospitals to run well. They've managed to appoint party surrogates to occupy virtually all positions in NHIS, as well as directors in hospitals. The few that rise to talk about it are transferred immediately. So I think all is simply because they are really not interested in money that goes into the authority. They are interested in collecting all the levies and keeping it government to misappropriate it, and no one is holding them responsible. They have called for this minister to come to parliament to answer questions about NHI several times. He has refused to appear. No one can subpoena him. He does what he wants. I think it is the powers that made him the minister that is causing this minister to behave like this.
Let me ask you this. I mean, you're right. The president did say that he had brought him on as health minister because of his accounting background for the purpose of managing the NHIA. But the current state of the NHIA, does that not suggest that the problems at NHIA are not accounting problems? We've heard about extortion and other things that are also digging a very deep hole in the finances of the authority.
It can be. It can be because our vice president and government is saying they'll be able to digitalize virtually everything. They have bought new software for the NHIA, new claims, electronic claims. How can people infiltrate in it? Don't they have security measures? It shouldn't be a matter of extortion. If there's extortion, they know those who are extorting. What the extortion that I don't want and we don't like is patients having to pay for services that are covered by the NHIA. Simply because we all pay that tax. Even the patient pays that tax. So why should we be paying for services that we have already paid for it? You know, from the Parliamentary Select Committee on Health, Akanbo has told us that in 2020, government made 2021 government made over 5 billion Ghana cedis and transferred less than 1 billion to NHIA, 700 and something thousand. The rest of the money, where did it go? Besides that money in 2020, health alone, because of coronavirus, had donations over 20-something billion.
Yeah.
The government needed only 12 billion to solve coronavirus. Where is that excess money? We don't know where it went. So it's not a matter of extortion in NHIA. It is that there is mismanagement, and they know it. It is once you appoint cronies, once you appoint party cronies into positions, no one can raise a finger against the other. And once MPs in parliament will say, to a government, and not hold them responsible for the lives of their constituents, this will happen. Or else, I think the only thing that Ghanaians should benefit from a government that must be given to them is health and education. But we are toying with it. We are collecting huge taxes for health and education, and the money is not turned out to the right channels to solve our health problems. So patients are forced to buy gloves for their surgical operations. Patients are forced to buy syringes for their injections. Patients are forced to even pay doctors top up to be able to get a good consultation. I think the whole problem is government lackadaisical attitude towards the health sector. If it is that we're not paying health insurance, that is different. But you are charging us for all this. You go to the port and clear anything, and you see the amount of money they collect as taxes for NHIA. You go to a restaurant and eat in Osu, and you see the taxes that come with it for NHIA. You go to any shop in Accra or anywhere, and you see the taxes that are being taken for NHIA. At the end, the money is not given to the authority. Why is government misappropriating the funds? What is it using the money for? Because everywhere we are crying for lack of funds. Where is the money going? It is the scheme of this government. It is the scheme of this government to some of us to misappropriate funds and do whatever it wants because they feel they are in power and no one can hold them on. We've seen what has happened to the health minister even when he bought vaccines that were non-existent. He was at the end exonerated. Exonerated for buying vaccines that were non-existent, sole contracts issued by only a minister without authorities' approval, public procurement authorities' approval. So it is what I've just said. The president looks aloof.
Now, let me ask you this, Dr. Anaba. I mean, let's be fair. It is not only under this administration that we have seen this indebtedness of the NHIA to its suppliers. It's a historical thing. We've had it in previous governments. There has always been a difficulty with government collecting the tax but not paying out the right amount to the scheme. It's been happening for many years now. So clearly the problem is not just this administration, is it?
It is not, but remember, those two previous governments, Kufuor's time, it was just beginning. Atamils came, tried to straighten it. Hama came and left. That is what we call the learning curve. We passed 10 years of the NHIA. More than that. If you take the first 10 years, we have problems and we are rectified. We've got in a smart software to manage it. With all this, we are experiencing the worst form of NHIA's delivery in the history of Ghana.
So now it's no longer a learning curve.
No, we start the learning curve. We should have been better now. We should have been flying now. It should have been that we should be adding certain services, and it should be that you can even take your card and go to anywhere, and your history would appear in any hospital. It should have been very easy now. But they've rather made it worse. We are going backwards. The first two regimes were learning curves because Kufuor instituted it just not long ago that he left. The Mahama and then Samuels came in, trying to help rectify it. Why did this government come promising to do it? But we are rather seeing a degeneration of the delivery of funds to the authority. And we know that we are getting huge, so many billions on behalf of National Health Insurance. But at the end of the year, I can tell you for the past 4 years, we've not spent 1 billion every year on NHIS. Meanwhile, we collect billions.
So, Dr. Anaba, let me ask you, what would be the solution? What should be the first step taken to start to rectify this age-old problem?
Like many other countries, advanced countries, we should scrap the board and put trustees into it, like they have in UK, US, and in the rest.
Why would that be an advantage?
It will be an advantage because trustees are working to make sure the system works well. It is not; they are not appointed by government. They are appointed by different organizations. How do they call it? The workers' union will have a rep. The doctors will have a rep. The chief can have a rep. Everybody will have a rep, and they must work in the interest of the people. But now the appointment is done by the government, and they're done to the tune of the government. If there were trustees, that the money must come to the NHIS, so what government responsible? Because if the labor union members don't fight for the money to come to it, they go back, labor organizations will ask them. If it is doctors, they'll ask them. If it is the chiefs, they'll ask for the money to move, and they'll ask for the money to be used judiciously. I think we should go the British way, like the American way, and appoint trustees to the NHIS, those who work and bring in money, those who will see to the judicious use of the money and the proper application of the funds. Not using the funds to pay speeding, what allowance, nursing training allowance, paying parliamentarians as CROs. Is that their work? That's not their job.
All right, now I want you to stay with us. Ohiming is also joining us via Zoom. Let us now watch the health minister himself explaining the extent of the problem. Then we'll come back for final thoughts from Dr. Anaba and from our correspondent, Ohiming Teria.
I have health insurance cards. My kids have them. But we don't use them. Because where we live and where we go, I pay when I go to Rich Hospital. I pay when I go to UGMC. I don't even present my health insurance card.
According to the health minister, some subscribers of the NHIS have lost confidence in the scheme, but assume the NHIS has collapsed. Mr. Ajimamenu says he has come across situations where NHIS beneficiaries are forced to cough 1,000 Ghana cedis for a cesarean service covered by the scheme. Some practices, he says, do not only affect the poor, but also drive away people like him to turn to cash payment at some health facilities for care. In some instances, NHIS subscribers who are unable to pay the exorbitant bills charged by the service providers turn to their parliamentarians for help, a situation Mr. Ajimamenu described as unfortunate.
From the end user point of view, it looks like health insurance is not working in our country at the moment. I'm a patient and I know what it is. And I interact with a lot of people, not only my constituency, not only my region, but elsewhere. Health insurance are treated in almost all our facilities. To the extent that even CS, some are paying more than 1,000 cedis from their pockets in quite a number of our facilities now, when that is on the health insurance benefit package list. So why should I use that harsh word, extort from the poor patients.
The health minister who spoke at the Ghana Health Service Senior Managers meeting for 2023 also spoke against the high cost of medical implants and other logistics. He called on the senior managers to find possible cheaper means of access to healthcare delivery while adopting mechanisms to support healthcare delivery.
There are certain disciplines that we cannot even go. As I stand here, I have somebody with an estimate for a orthopedic intervention for 53,000 Ghana cedi. Yesterday in the night, by 8 o'clock, that lady was sitting in my house. The previous time she chased me in my office, MP's office in Doma. I was just getting into my car. She showed me the cost estimate. I said, Madam, I cannot afford. Only on you, 53,000. What about the rest who have queued looking for support from the MP? Then she asked me, Entimingu, what do we do about this? So we need strategies, not from the DG alone, not from anybody in the ministry headquarters, but how we can get cheaper implants to supply for people to use so that they get out of these challenges.
Meanwhile, Chief Executive of NHIA, Dr. Bernard Okoboy, talks about efforts to improve claim submission processes at the NHIA. His address was delivered by the Head of Research, Policy and Monitoring and Evaluation, Dr. Francis Asensobwedi.
Going forward, if claims delay beyond a certain period, which is about 3 months, we may find it difficult to accept such claims. And that is the reason why we are digitalizing the claim submission processes.
From Kumasi, for JoyNews, Ohiminteria reporting.
Right, now, Ohiming, that was your report. You were there. You've talked to us about the response and reactions of the stakeholders. What is the situation on the ground, apart from the health minister's own anecdote about people's real life suffering and women asking whether they should die because they cannot afford medication, which should have been covered by their health insurance? What is the situation on the ground, the end user? How are these numbers and statistics affecting them?
Yes, Kojo, many people have several stories. If you speak to people on the streets of Kumasi, for instance, they have stories that they want to share with you as far as their association with NHIS is concerned. The issue is that, yes, they have come to assume that that is the status quo. So who do you complain to? How do you complain? So let's accept it and then move forward. And so many people who hitherto had registered for the NHIS, they feel so reluctant to access services under the scheme. So they prefer to go to facilities where they will be charged, they will pay, and then go away. There are also complaints about even when you go with a card, you've paid, you are up to date, your membership is up to date. You go, they tell you, wait, somebody will come and then perhaps impute your information. It takes you several minutes or sometimes hours. And so if you look at, if you had paid for the services and then if you go there under the National Health Insurance Scheme, the delay associated with you going with the card, a lot of people prefer to go to the facilities where they will pay. Even if they will go to the same facility that is covered under health insurance, they want to go and then pay. And so in some other words, you can say that, yes, cash and carry has not been eradicated. It's still being run, alongside the health insurance scheme or the health insurance, system. And so it's an issue that has to be dealt with. But for Mr. Kwaku Agyeman-Manu, he himself has tried and tested, the scheme, and he's able to tell the story from the point of being an end user. And that is how come he said he's a registered, a member of the health insurance scheme, but he and his family don't use the card because perhaps he explained that they are well-to-do, they can afford services at the Ridge Hospital, at the University of Ghana Medical Center. But what about the poor patient, the poor Ghanaian who is unable to afford the services or the cost of healthcare are outside the health insurance. So he wants everybody, stakeholders, to come together, at a round table to discuss possible means of eradicating the cash and carry system that appears to be taking over the health insurance scheme, Kojo.
Thank you for that, Ohiming. Dr. Anaba, I'm going to take final thoughts from you on this. You have been a healthcare practitioner for a very long time. You were even before the National Health Insurance Scheme was introduced. Tell us in stark and clear terms, if nothing is done and this problem persists, what will healthcare look like? What are some of the images from the early 2000s that we will start seeing re-emerging in our hospitals? What will it look like to be a Ghanaian with healthcare needs and no healthcare insurance?
It will just be like, if you don't have food, you don't go to money, you don't go to a restaurant. So you stay with your hunger. So if you don't have money, you don't go to a hospital. But that would not be the only thing. People would resort to various means and orthodox means of seeking healthcare. Morbidity would increase, mortality would increase. But I don't think it should go that way. I think we Ghanaians must mobilize ourselves. We cannot be contributing money for our health, and the government is refusing to use the money to take care of our health. I think that we must rise against the odds and push the government, if at all you will spend any money else at the right place, for the health sector. That is where our lives depend. The minister painted a vivid picture, and I'm happy he painted it. But I'm surprised he didn't say he has failed on the assignment the president gave to him. He has failed to say he's resigning. This is immoral. In a civilized country, for a minister who was appointed to strengthen the NHIA, after saying this, that he himself has experienced it, he would conclude by tendering in his resignation letter. But we know this minister. Even when he was caught corrupt, he didn't resign. How much more when he's failing to correct his subordinates? So I know he will resign. But it is left unto we Ghanaians to rise up, to push the government, to make sure the money we are contributing for health is used for health. Because we are making billions of Ghana cedis for health, and we spend less than $1 billion in a year on health. So it is because probably we are not approaching the government in a very, very serious way. Senior leaders, church leaders, religious leaders, chiefs should rise up and tell government to at least once in their lifetime in their government, they should do the needful by spending health money in health. Or else they are just going to subject people like that woman who said, should I go and die? To go and die.
Indeed.
And which shouldn't be the case.
Dr. Anaba, I want to thank you for your time. Now, Ohiming, finally, after hearing the health minister, you obviously followed the story and you've got a response from the managers of the NHIA itself. Am I right?
Yesterday's meeting, a portion of it was open to the media. So I'm hoping to get some response from the officials of NHIA. So I'm still seen around. At this moment, it's a closed-door meeting because this is where the top managers meet to digest and also look at the way forward. So I've been promised of possibly meeting some of the top officials here. So hopefully we'll get some response from NHIA.
All right. Thank you so much for your time and for pursuing this story for us. Ohiming Tewia from the JoyNews Health Desk. All right, on to energy. Now, the minister of that sector, Dr. Matthew Opoku-Prempeh, says that his efforts to revamp the Tema Oil Refinery, TOR, have been thwarted by the company's continued mismanagement. According to the minister, he presented an opportunity to TOR to refine all condensates into pre-mixed fuel and use the revenue to start settling its debts as government works to help pay the rest. At a news conference yesterday, the workers announced a series of actions to force government to revamp the refinery. Bernard Owusu is the national chairman of the General Transport Petroleum and Chemical Workers Union. Let's hear him. We must apologize. We have a bit of a situation with the audio there. We will fix that and bring you those comments. But why don't we start off with what the minister said? He said that all $2.5 million worth of products have never been accounted for. He did, however, assure that the government is considering some proposals to help restore the oil refinery. Let's hear him.
I gave Tor a new business opportunity in the premix fuel market, that all the condensate from Ghana Gas should go to Tor and use it for blending premix fuel, right? The last time I heard, over $2.5 million worth of condensate that got missing from Tor. If we all want Tor working, we don't want another ECG in Tor, do we? Because it will break the back of government, the bills in Tor. They have over $500 million of debt sitting on there. And go and look at how the debt's accumulated. People bring their crude to refine, and then crude losses. I set up a committee that worked for 8 months just trying to reconcile Tor losses. My sister, you don't pay taxes for it to be a drain. You pay taxes for an efficient function of government. Government, I can tell you, is doing so much work to bring Tor together. As we speak, there are proposals lying down in Tor. The Attorney General is having a look, SIGA is having a look, Finance Ministry. Because you same journalists will come and say, government has sold Tor to its cronies if we don't get it right. And getting it right is a difficult proposition that we are putting out. We will work diligently to give Ghanaians what is good.
Right, Dr. Matthew Poku-Prempeh, the Minister for Energy. Now, on his rounds today, we had our man with him, following to monitor the ECG collections exercise. And we have him here with us to find out exactly how that is going. James Abeji joins us. James, how did things go today as you shadowed the minister?
Well, Kojo, it's I would say it has been successful because they got what the reason why they went on the tour. So they've been to 2 companies. First stop was at the Messrs. Boston Investment Limited, where we were told that they were owing some 1.8 million Ghana cedis. So they went there, had a meeting with management of the company, and then it turned out that the company actually paid some 600,000 Ghana cedis last week, pending a balance of 1.2 million Ghana cedis. And so the ECG insisted that they make the payment or the risk being taken off the grid. And so the company actually agreed and paid the 1.2 million Ghana cedis.
There and then?
Yes, there and then.
Wow.
And so that was sorted. Then we moved to the Coca-Cola company on the Spintex Road, where we were told that they were owing just last month's bill, March bill. The signal was that it's not only, the exercise is not only focused on companies that have piled up debt, but also to demonstrate that there are some customers who are consistent, they have been prompt and consistent in paying their bills. And so to tell the other side of the story. And so the Coca-Cola company, we were told, was owing 906,000 Ghana cedis from March. And so the ECG's policy is that if your bill is given to you, you have 14 days to make payment of that bill. And so they went there to have an interaction with the company and for the minister to also congratulate the company for actually being timely in the payment of all of their bills. And so they have, after that, the company has agreed to pay the 906,000 Ghana cedis also. And so they also made that payment. And so from these 2 companies, the ECG says that they have recovered about 2.8 million Ghana cedis just on today's exercise.
A good day on the market, huh?
Yes, very good day.
All right. What do they plan to do next? Where next are they going with this collection exercise?
So officially, the exercise is supposed to end on Friday because it was a 1 month marathon they were trying to run to collect 5.7 billion. we know that they said they have collected some 2.5 billion Ghana cedis already. And so ideally Friday, the exercise should have ended. But the minister indicated that it is not ending entirely. They will take the break after Friday to reevaluate all of what they have been up to in the 1 month and see what measures they can put in place. But he can say on authority that this would continue every now and then, at least a week in 1 month to do all of this. But he has some concerns about customers not paying the debt and waiting for the ECG to chase after them to collect these bills. He said it is necessary to collect all of this so that the ECG can also be able to pay the IPPs that they owe. We know they are owing the power producers and all of that. So he emphasized on that as well. I'm sure we can. Let's watch him.
There shouldn't be some payers of electricity and others who are we call non-payers of electricity. Whether it's because the meter is not working, or it's because you are doing things, or you are using a meter not certified, or you are bypassing the ECG system. Who should pay for who to enjoy? We should all know that ECG is rendering such a vital service for all Ghanaians, especially in their zone. And everybody must prioritize paying electricity. If ECG collects 30% less of what it has to collect because people are stealing, because people are bypassing, because people are not paying, with all good excuses that people are giving for not paying, how does ECG pay its IPPs? That is a reality, my sister. 1 + 1 can never be 1.5. And if we try to make it 1.5, the 0.5 will be hovering somewhere and you have to chase it. And that's what ECG is doing now. ECG must not be chasing customers like it's chasing in Ghana. But there are two sides to every situation. It is because Ghanaians have not come up with a situation where they willingly go and say, even though my bill hasn't come, I'm paying because I know that every month I consume 100 units. So if my bill, please, can I finish, please? If my bill has come and it's 100 cedis and it's not come, let me even pay 50 cedis down. If we all get into that habit, we would lessen the pressure on ECG to pay the IPPs. And the IPPs will not come to you, my sister, with the situation that they have. They are not getting enough.
Now, Ghana has been cited as the main transit point for the illicit shipment of gold. That is according to the State of Illicit Economy, which is an Africa report presented at the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement Convention, which is underway in Cape Town, South Africa. An investigative piece by Al Jazeera recently stoked debate about how some Ghanaian officials could be complicit in activities of money laundering for a group of mafia controlling the gold industry in Africa. In spite of a fierce rebuttal from some government sources, a new investigative report is suggesting that Ghana is indeed becoming a hotspot for illicit gold activity. Blessed Soga has been there for us. He has this report. Actually, we have Blessed joining us live, which is a treat. Blessed, good to have you once again. Talk us through the details of this report as it pertains to gold. I think you might have to mute that microphone for us, Blessed. Let's work on fixing that connection so we can hear Blessed all the way from Cape Town in South Africa, where the AFTA convention has been ongoing. This report was released as part of that convention, and it highlights the role that Ghana is playing as a transit point for the smuggling and illicit movement of gold. Blessed, if you can hear us, talk us through the report and its mention of gold and Ghana. Right, yeah. I think we do have a bit of a problem there. We're going to work on that. We'll fix it. Get Blessed to walk us through all of those all-important details when we come back. Also, which government officials are at the center of these allegations? I'm sure you already know. We'll get into it all when we come back. There you are. You're welcome back. And let's take another stab at that gold story. A document has cited Ghana as the main transit point for the illicit shipment of gold. The document is the State of Illicit Economy Africa report, which was presented at the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement Convention, which is underway in Cape Town, South Africa. Now, you probably have heard of an investigative piece by Al Jazeera, which recently stoked debate about how some Ghanaian officials could be complicit in activities of money laundering for a group of mafia controlling the gold industry here in Africa. Now, in spite of a fierce rebuttal from some government sources around the president who was mentioned in the report, a new investigative report is suggesting that Ghana is becoming a hotspot for illicit gold activities. Blessed Soka joins us now. Blessed, I think we've fixed that problem now. We can hear you. Why don't you talk us through the details of this report?
Well, Kojo, if you can hear me now, officially, as we know it, gold worth at least 22.8 to somewhere 23.45 billion US dollars actually leaves the African continent, and not just Africa, but also Latin America each year. Now, we do know that out of this estimate, from what the report is telling us, and I need to state that this report was released, just as we pointed out yesterday, by Original. Original is a safety standard-based organization that is focused on ensuring that the right things are done in terms of trading of goods and services. And this is a report released as of April 2023. So it's the latest report coming through on the state of the illicit economy, talking about how there's money laundering on the continent and also illicit activities happening all across. And now the focus for today is on the extractive sector. So as I was pointing out earlier, 23.45 billion officially is what we know as the total amount of receipt of the amount of gold that is, of course, valued from the African continent and also Latin America each year. But what's shocking in this report is that out of this total amount that we're recording, an estimate of some 55 to 60%, as much as 60% of the gold mined on these two continents, that's Africa and on the Latin American soil, is, guess what, considered illegal. Now, local gold refineries, as the report is pointing out, are being extensively used to launder gold from illicit sources in an artisanal mining sector involving several millions of people, and we do know that that's very prevalent in Ghana. There's also the point about forced labor and the high risk associated with all of that. It's coming in the wake of the reports that we've seen, for instance, from international media such as Al Jazeera, which is pointing out to some gold mafia, which is predominant on the African continent. This report appears to be backing that, pointing to the fact that illicit gold mining is becoming a rising source of income for, guess what, Kojo? Cartels, criminal gangs, and non-state armed groups as well, with the mineral sector averaging about 17% of the global threats and conflict finance compared to drug. So it's ranging very close to drug. Drug is just accounting for around 27%. So it tells you how close and how rising the illicit gold movement or shipment, cartel or mafia is growing across the African continent. And it's coming together with some impact on the economy of these countries that are gold producing countries. For instance, there's the associated problem of capital flight, where, of course, these African rich countries, resource-rich countries, are, of course, making exports of some 35 billion. However, if you look at what's happening, we're not deriving the benefits that we should be taking from this mining sector. And why Ghana, for instance? If you take a look at the map, which was released by the State of the Illicit Economy report by Original, it appears that Ghana is becoming a safe transit point. So you have safe destination points, which I have in the report with me now, and safe transit points. On the map, what we see is that Ghana, for instance, is a safe transit point. So illegal gold is being shipped out of our country to the likes of Switzerland. It goes round in circles. It appears that part of the destination, according to this report, part of them is Qatar, We also have the United Arab Emirates, and there are some that are flowing from somewhere Central and Southern Africa, moving into the likes of India. Uganda on the continent appears to be also another spot that was pointed out. And if you look at this whole map, Uganda and Ghana appear to be the two most identified safe transit points for illegal gold trading. And that's where, of course, a lot of eyebrows are being raised about what's happening in our country, looking at the fact that there are recent reports pointing out that some government element may have some ties to this cartel. It's been denied by the government, but of course, given what's coming up in this report now, there are lots of questions to be answered.
And it was actually the president who was mentioned in this report, and the denial has come from the president's legal counsel, who tweeted that the president knows nothing about those allegations. All right, now, Blessed, I think it's quite clear that whatever this illegal gold is, much of it is going to be the output of galamsey, illegal mining. Because there is it doesn't match our records of how much gold we export. I remember famously in 2018, the vice president, during a meet the press at Jubilee House, actually said on a trip to Dubai, he was told that Dubai receives about $6 billion worth of gold from Ghana. But Ghana's total gold exports for that year was $2 billion. That's total, not just to Dubai. So what does this report say about the destinations of this illicit gold? Have they been able to trace where this gold pops up across the globe?
Well, that's an interesting perspective you're bringing up, Kojo, because in this report, what we find to be very clear is that all of these companies that we're talking about, typically involved in this illicit trade of gold, appear to be paying only 0 to 4% of tax on official amounts. So it points out to the fact that we're having serious revenue leakages, which is in turn impacting the Ghanaian economy. Because if you have a country such as Ghana, which is one of the highest deposits, exporting countries of gold, you would expect that ordinarily out of this 23 plus billion US dollar economy in terms of gold, would definitely be having 60% or 50% market share. So if we're supposed to derive the benefits should be in high returns. But due to these illicit activities that are happening, what you find is that the country is losing out on revenue, as being pointed out in this report, that the revenue rate is just between 0 to 4% of the time. And it's a reason for which these civil society organizations believe that a lot of steps and measures ought to be taken to address the concerns that are being identified in this document. But I must point out, just to state on records, that no government official has been cited in this report, except to say that it is increasingly becoming of concern to these organizations that Ghana, as we're finding on the map, is becoming a safe transit point for these illicit gold activities. And what's instructive in this report is that they talk about the artisanal mining sector, which means that in the small-scale mining sector, there's a lot of problem that we need to deal with. Many would say, well, I mean, the report and its findings goes to the heart of the concerns that the average Ghanaian has about illegal mining and what's happening in the small mining sector. So clearly, if there's a need for us to focus there, that's where we need to pay attention to first of all, track what's happening. Mind you, government is running the gold for oil deal. And once we're running that policy, some unscrupulous individuals may want to take advantage of that because, mind you, what's coming from the main and multinationals or the large-scale mining sector can be tracked, except to say that what's happening in the small-scale sector is where there is a lot of problems. So indeed, that's, of course, part of the concerns that this report is raising, asking that, of course, governments pay attention to what's happening in their country and how there's a sharp rise or a growing cartel of persons trading in illicit gold across the continent.
That's a very important distinction you made there. Of course, there are two reports we're discussing here. The first one being the one that was reported at the AFTA convention, the one that you are briefing us on, but also the story makes reference to the Al Jazeera report, where the president was mentioned, and of course the denials have come from the president's counsel. So important to make that distinction there.
The Al Jazeera incident is yes, precisely as we're pointing out, is very different, from what's happening here, because obviously, yes, the reports that we have was by an independent media organization.
Yes.
However, this State of the Illicit Economy report is simply bringing out issues relating to what's happening, for instance, in our mining sector. You cannot talk about mining on the African continent without referring to what's happening in Ghana, for instance. And it's part of the reasons why, of course, the group is raising some key concerns about what the potential threat may be to our economy. So, for instance, there's this revelation coming through now that when this cartel or this criminal gang that's operating on the African continent grabs the cash, they use that to finance illicit activities and also some extremist groups. And so that in turn, of course, brings about national security threats, a reason for which they believe that our state authorities must begin to act and to crack down on the small mining sector and to ensure that the system is sanitized to the extent that we are able to, first of all, track what's moving out of the continent and how much we're getting in revenue or royalties, as you would want to call them, to the state, because that's our main business as a country, to ensure that whatever resource we are mining, of course, it benefits the average Ghanaian. That's the end story.
So obviously you have had the opportunity to interact with the private sector players at this AFTA convention, where this report was, the details of this report were shared. Tell me, what role is the private sector seeing in providing solutions to this massive, leakage of revenue to government through the illicit transportation of gold through countries like Ghana?
Well, just as we were pointing out yesterday, it's just not Ghana. There are a number of countries also facing this similar challenge. And beyond the extractive sector, you find that same challenge happening in the pharmaceuticals, which we were discussing yesterday. Of course, you had Mark G from Original telling you about how widespread the problem is and the need for urgent action. It does suggest that there's a bigger problem about standards on the African continent. The fact that we're indeed trading, but we're bending the rules in terms of how we trade. So the recommendation here is that we need to, first of all, harmonize our standards and our protocols on how we trade. And if we do have the standards and the protocol, clear ones on how we are to go about trade, indeed we'll be on the lookout for some, quote, African standards, which will then set the guide, set the tone on how we can do business. Because mind you, whatever happens in Ghana, in the mining sector, will obviously have a bearing on what's happening in South Africa and its mining sector, for instance. So that's why there's a big push for standards and to ensure that before we go ahead with this intra-African trade, all of these bottlenecks must be dealt with, because mind you, in West Africa, where we find ourselves, there's this prevent, for instance, these cartels and these criminal gangs taking over our small-scale mining sector and feeding their extremist groups with the cash that they grab. For instance, a country like Ghana cannot claim to be safe. For instance, you heard from the president when he attended the US-Africa Summit, pointing out that a mine has been given. Reportedly, we're not in a position to independently verify that. A mine was given to the Wagner Group, which has been tagged as one of the mercenary groups operating a militia base in our neighboring country. So if indeed this report is pointing out that when the cartel get the cash, they give it to the extremist groups, it does suggest that there is a problem that we are facing, not just in Ghana, but across the African continent, which needs to be dealt with so as to allow intra-Africa trade. And that's what's been resounding throughout this Africa Continental Free Trade Area private sector.
Always a fountain
but could you just,
yeah.
before we wrap up the conversation, I also need to point out that a couple of minutes ago, yes, and could you, if you can hear me, I was just pointing out that a couple of minutes ago, I was engaging the Secretary General of the Continental Free Trade Area, His Excellency Wamkeli Mena, who spoke to me at length about a number of issues confronting even trading amongst African countries themselves. One of the key challenges that's come up has got to do with even our payment system and the inability of the continent itself to have one currency. In West Africa, we were moving into the zone where, of course, we wanted to have the equal for the West African region. The convergence criteria has been a challenge for West Africa. It appears that that challenge has been transposed to the continental level, where, of course, it's inhibiting our ability to have a common to trade and to do business. So these are matters that unfold later. What, of course, will be business.
Well, no doubt these are hurdles that we're expecting, that conventions like the one you're attending will start the journey towards finding solutions for. Blessed, it's always a pleasure. A fountain of knowledge from this South African event. We appreciate you very much indeed. And that's Blessed Soga of JoyNews, who is coming to us live, as he has done every day this week, from Cape Town in South Africa. Now, the head of the University of Ghana's Department of Communication Studies, Dr. Abena Inimwa Yeboah Benin, says Ghana's media needs help. The department is launching the State of Ghana's Media Report, which it says details many weaknesses in journalism practice in the country. JoyNews' senior editor, Fifi Kumson, was there himself. He sat with one of the authors of the report, Professor Audrey Gajepo, and they talked about the findings. Here's what he learned.
Many critical highlights, but two of the ones that concern me most is the working conditions of journalists. And I couldn't help but think that journalists advocate for everybody but themselves, because really the working conditions of journalists is very, very poor, and it makes the practice of journalism even more precarious than you would think it should be. And I really do think that media owners and media managers must be engaged on this very critical issue. Something has to change, otherwise that will break the back of journalism.
You also make the point about political capture of the media. How extensive is this?
According to the report, it's very, very extensive. And that partly accounts for why we have such an oversaturated broadcast sector. Because with every alternation in power comes political influencers who want to obtain media authorization in order to increase their sphere of influence. So, of concern is the politicization in the media, in media ownership, and the fact that it's opaque, it's not transparent. And so we really don't know who is behind some of the media that we consume. It's important that people know, so that they can make decisions based on that content.
There is this advocacy for content regulation of media houses. What is your own opinion on this?
This is what was raised by the keynote speaker, and I thought it was very brave of him, because it's almost like a sacred cow to talk about content regulation of media. We do recall that Giba took the Media Commission to court, I think it was in 2015, if my memory serves me right, when they wanted to have an LI, when they passed an LI that would, on content standards, something like that. I don't think that he has a point. And I don't think he means that content regulation should be done to censor media or to stifle media. what he was trying to say, especially in the broadcast sector, and I think he was mainly speaking to the broadcast sector, is that there is some kind of framework that determines what is fit to air and not fit to air. And in Ghana, that framework is non-existent, and it's sorely needed. The lacuna has been occasioned because we don't have a broadcasting law. And as the keynote speaker pointed out, the draft is almost moribund because of technological advancements.
And that was Professor Audrey Gajipo speaking to our very own Fifi Kumson. Now let's learn a bit more. We're joined by Dr. Abna Inimwa Yabu-Abanin. She's the head of department at the University of Ghana's School of Communication Studies. Dr. Yabu-Abanin, thank you for your time and good afternoon. I think perhaps we'll need you to unmute your microphone just so we can hear you.
Are you
Perfect. We can hear you now.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. All right, so maybe you can walk us through the headlines of this study, the big numbers. What exactly did this study uncover by way of main revelations?
A number of things. So we cover 7 main chapters, and if you like, I'll give a few suggestions or some of the headlines from each of the chapters. So, for instance, the chapter on broadcast media ownership and regulation, as you've just heard Professor Gajipo refer to, we find that there's quite a bit of opacity in media ownership. We don't really know who is behind the media stations, and when we know, they tend also to be political faces, and there are questions about the framework within which licenses are being secured to come to media ownership in the country. So if you wanted to extend the findings to what we should be worried about, then perhaps a bit of media capture is a concern, because political faces, political voices are the ones that are getting control of media. There is also evidence of media concentration and a tendency, if you like, towards media empire building. So too few hands are in charge of the 513 media, radio at least, stations across the country. And that is a concern. If you consider the media to be that public sphere where we are all supposed to come and trade ideas, then it can be a bit of a concern. If you go to the chapter, for instance, on financial viability of the media, the report suggests that across the country, the media is generally not profitable. Media organizations are struggling financially. For the best part, I mean, if they're doing very well, it is breaking even rather than being very profitable. That is a concern, obviously, because financial viability has many, many different implications, including the opportunity and capacity to do the job of media and to do it in a manner that serves the people. Besides that, we also find that the threat to financial viability of the media come from, if you like, 3 main sources. So there is saturation, particularly in the broadcast media space. Too many media players, often concentrated within Accra and Kumasi, fighting for a rather small and increasingly dwindling revenue pot from advertising sources. So that is a problem there. Another challenge to financial viability we find is the growing influence of big tech. So your Facebook, your Twitter, etc., they are driving media. They are attracting a lot of the resources that should be coming, for instance, to JoyNews, and there's very little that we can do about it. And that is causing challenges to the financial health of media organizations. The last one we find is that the general weak Ghanaian economy, and particularly the effects that COVID seems to have left with us in the economy. That is causing quite a bit of a challenge for media organizations. We find also, if you went to the media working conditions in the media, there is evidence of precarity within the media industry. So work within media organizations is quite precarious. Media professionals, media employees are not that well paid. Oftentimes, we are not working with contracts, even though media is a formal sector. Recruitment practices are quite intransparent. So people tend to be coming in based on whether they know Kojo and Kojo knows somebody, etc. Rather than openly advertise competitive, you have the skills, apply, we give you a contract, we recruit you. And in the absence of contract, for instance, it means that a media professional could lose their job tomorrow with no recourse to anything or anybody. That makes the work of the media quite precarious. And if you juxtapose this with the reality that actually, particularly for frontline media personnel, they also do face threats for doing their work, especially when they're doing accountability journalism. So the fact that that employee is not being well taken care of can have implications for how hard he or she is ready to go in getting that accountability journalism done to serve all of our interests. A lot of media employees are also working without the benefit, for instance, of healthcare support, including even when they have faced trauma in the line of work. Am I okay to go on to the other chapters?
Absolutely.
Okay. So then we have a chapter also on the safety of journalists. We find quite a bit of a growing sense of insecurity among journalists, whereas generally they find Ghana to be a fairly peaceful place to practice their profession if you compare it to other countries. We do find that increasingly they are developing a sense of insecurity. There is a feeling that you might get attacked for doing your work if you don't do your work in a manner that pleases somebody. And unfortunately, oftentimes it appears state actors are the ones actually perpetrating safety violations against journalists. As you would imagine, we also find that investigative journalists tend to be the ones most likely to face attacks. The attacks come in different forms, but predominantly will be verbal abuse. But in quite a number of cases also, there's evidence of physical abuse having been suffered by journalists. Then the chapter on media and national development speaks to how well the media delivers its responsibility to supporting the developmental efforts of the country. And we find that, well, if you wanted to look at what provisions exist by way of policy, constitutional provisions, etc., to ensure that the media can be a supporter of the development cause, we have quite a bit of that. We are quite covered well within the legal provisions that should support the media to do its work. However, in the delivery of its mandates of supporting development by covering development issues, i.e. education, health, etc., the media does face some challenges. Sometimes it is internal, routine journalistic practices and protocols that stand in their way. Sometimes it is influences from media owners, subtle influences from gatekeepers, etc. But also sometimes it is from advertisers who hold the purse strings to your next salary. And so if they're not too comfortable with certain types of stories you're doing, then sometimes a bit of pressure, subtle, but it exists, would come in your direction. So broadly, these are some of the things that we've seen. The last chapter on training and capacity building reports that even though most training, media and communication training institutions are accredited by the GTEC, Ghana Tertiary Education Commission, the regulator, there are quite some lapses in terms of practice within the institution. In quite some instances, you find that people who are training media professionals, who are preparing people for careers in media and communication industries, are themselves not well positioned to do it. So they either don't have qualification, academic qualification, in this case the PhD, but also professional experience, because you know that our industry is quite practice oriented. And so it's either they don't have the professional qualification or they don't have experience at all. I mean, In some cases, for instance, people who are teaching communication programs with no background whatsoever in communication, whether training or practice, and when they're even trying to get a PhD, they are getting it in a different discipline altogether. So you really wonder what kind of grounding is being used to train people for the industry. And it can have implications for quality of practice.
Okay, was there any data gathered on the how much trust the public have in the media, mainstream media compared to social media and new media? Was there any study to give some data on that?
Right. So for the most part, we focused the study we've reported today on media organizations and what is happening within media institutions. But we do pick a sense of some sentiment from the public because practitioners have told us their concerns, for instance, about dwindling trust as a result of their credibility ratings. Misinformation, like it or not, is here. And because it happens within the media, never mind the fact that a lot of it is in social media, that is not gate kept. It does have implications for the overall thinking around media and how it is delivering its work. So we do pick a sense like that. But hopefully this is an angle that subsequent editions of the report should be taking an interest in.
Right. This is very useful. No doubt it's going to be a great tool for the improvement of media here in Ghana. And for that, we're grateful. Dr. Abna Enimwa Yeboabanin is the head of department at the School of Communication Studies, University of Ghana. Okay, let's do some politics. The new Patriotic Party in the Manso Adubia constituency has launched a restructuring process with the aim of substantially canvassing grassroots support for victory in election 2024. According to the party, the decision will have significant consequences on its electoral chances in both the parliamentary and presidential elections. As part of the process, the party has established a women's wing at Dadiase and plans to replicate this in 86 other communities. Let's learn a bit more.
I normally don't do politics.
The Member of Parliament from Manso Adubia, Yaofri Pong Ado, says it is critical to unify women in the constituency who make up about 55% of the total population to prepare them for the general election. The effort is also aimed at economically empowering women through agriculture and other means to promote the overall well-being of the constituents.
It is a policy of the New Patriotic Party to get more women to become economically empowered, and that is exactly we, the New Patriotic Party, in the Manso Adubia constituency, which is also the same as the Amansie South District. We have taken upon ourselves to organize the women in all the communities. You cannot have every woman getting empowered, but if you organize it in such a way that the membership of such an organization will be seen to be empowered, the rest will come. It will be a natural sequence that they also come and join. And it's all because, you see, women form about 55% of the population of this district. And if you empower a woman, you've empowered the whole family. So that is how come we want to organize such programs in all the 86 communities, so that next time, if, for example, the next community over there sees that the women here have organized themselves, or even in this community, not all women are members of this group that we just launched officially. So when they see the good things they are doing and becoming economically empowered, they will come naturally. And that is what we want to do, to organize our women towards election 2024.
Constituency Women's Organizer Ruth Osei says that the initiative is to rally many women to support the MPP, particularly the Member of Parliament, ahead of the elections.
So I think I had only few ladies or women supporting our candidates. That's the one that the party people have chosen to lead the party in our constituency. So like everything became so difficult and hard that even difficult to get women to help you in mobilization and other things that women can do in campaigning.
Rood assures women in the constituency will receive training to help them spread the party's message and defend government's policy when necessary.
Sometimes when you go somewhere, I'm an NPP member, but the people doesn't defend the party. When they see NDC people talking about ill thing about the party, they just go and support. So this is a starting point for me to motivate them, teach them. As a member of a party, you're supposed to defend your party, work hard for the party for come 2024 for us to be victorious over the election and also win the seat as such, because we really suffered.
She also distributes food stuff to the most disadvantaged residents. The construction of the Mansour Adubia Road was one of the topmost interests of the constituency before the 2020 general election. The MP says the road is currently being constructed. Once completed, the road will significantly benefit commercial and agricultural activities in the area. A report by Mohammed Nuruddin.
Right, now I guess it's a good way to segue into our constituency watch. And today, we take you to the Western North region. Our focus is on the Seshi Rioso constituency. Today, we're going to speak to one of 4 candidates in the race to Parliament for the NDC. Here's the full list as it will appear on the ballot paper when the party's delegates vote. Sam Jerome, Kofi Bente Afo, Frank Asare Pedro, and Emmanuel Adansi Bona. Frank Asare Pedro is our guest today. Frank, it's good to have you. Maybe we'll start from the obvious. Why did you decide to go for this parliamentary seat?
Kojo, first and foremost, let me greet you and greet our cherished viewers. I decided to go, having been the constituency youth organizer for 8 years, a branch youth organizer for 4 years, a polling agent of the party, and knowing very well that we are at a point where we need to win the Sehuyoso seat for the NDC. So it is a clarion call from the people that they need one of their own to come and win the seat for us. Because at this time, the NDC needs a candidate that has the gravitas to win the seat back for us. If you check the records, we've been winning since 92 till 2016.
Lost for the first time.
Lost for the first time in 2016, and we lost again in 2020. So we need a candidate who is one of our own, who identifies with us, who can unite the party. And I think I stand a chance to win the seat for the NDC. That is why I'm in the race.
Now, the loss was very narrow in 2020, just 0.1% difference. Some would suggest that it's historically an NDC, constituency. You lost in 2016 and lost again narrowly in 2020, but it seems you're back on the way to winning in terms of the trend. Do you see it as an easy seat for the NDC?
I have been consistent on this. I tell people that Sehuyoso is not a swing constituency. It is an NDC stronghold. For some reason, we lost. And the reason for me was that the MPP was consistent with the candidate they were presenting. They presented a candidate in 2004, he lost. 2008, he lost. In 2012, he lost. So they brought him again in 2016. The people were like, oh, I think this person has got something to offer. Let's try him. Then they put him there. He's not performing. So they will definitely go back to their mother party, at the NDC. So for me, any candidates that we present that is very, vocal, that is known within the ranks of the party, that is known within our constituency will win. That is why I put myself up. So you see.
But if they pick you, then that would also not be consistent. Evans Paul Addo was the candidate the last time around. And then if you come along, that's a new name, Pedro. Do you not feel that the same consistency that you are saying they voted for in the NPP will be missing for the NDC?
Okay, so Kojo, this is it. Evans Paul Addo is not in the race now, as you presented up there. He has been the MP for 12 years. Then he lost in 2016. In 2020, I was contesting, but I had to back off for him. And this time around, he's not contesting. So I am the immediate past constituency youth organizer for the constituency. I'm a member of the national communication team. I come across as somebody who has the grassroots support, somebody who is with the people. So even though I will be on the ballot for the first time, I will win the seat for the party because of my relationship with the people. So I tell you that at this particular time, the NDC needs a candidate that one can unite our party. And I say so because, you see, whether we like it or yes, a seat that we've had for a longer time, there will be some minor factions. Having worked for the party for the past 17 years, all the factions in the party have that relation with them, that if I should be on the ticket, everyone will be willing to come on board to work. Also, we need a candidate who is very respectful, who can identify with the people easily. It's not as though he's contesting today, so he sees you and he's bowing, but he has always been with us. So, because you see, people are presenting you as their MP, they should be able to come to you. And I'm the person who they can always come to. So, I stand the chance.
The
also,
other three on the ballot are unapproachable? Is that what you're saying?
I always tell people that it's like a tomato seller in the market. You tell the people that the tomatoes you are selling is not rotten. That does not mean those who are following you or those others who are selling theirs is rotten. You are talking about yours. And what I'm telling you is that we need a candidate who has served the party for a longer time. You see, NDC rewards loyalty. In 2007, when I was in KNUST, myself, Sami Jemfi, Beatrice Sana, and a whole lot of people, Osman Ayaraga and Co. Those days when I was in KNUST, I was going to the constituency. I was working my head out, all just to get the NDC win the USO seat and win the presidential. Then we won. I completed KNUST. Whilst I was working in the mining company, I was the constituency youth organizer. So, Kojo, you get what I am coming from. So, I've worked with the party, our people, long service to the party, and loyalty to the party counts. Because at the end of the day, should I become the parliamentary candidate, others are watching the NDC. Oh, for NDC, when you work for the party, the time will come for them to reward you. And that will push the youth, having been the youth organizer, and it's more so to knowing the problem of the people, especially Kojo. One of the difficulties in Secretary also now is jobs. So the youth will want somebody who is like them. And should he get there, I'm a young person, so you have to be pushing. So I tell them that I'm going to be your servant. If there's any opportunity elsewhere, you tell me, then I go there. You get it?
Say that.
No, not that all politicians.
Until they get their 4x4. But let me ask you this: what are the real issues in Secretary? You talked about jobs, right? But look, if you become the MP for Secretary, also you're a lawmaker. As a lawmaker, how are you going to help people get jobs?
Okay, so Kojo, that is an interesting thing. Truth is that it is trite knowledge that the MP is primarily a lawmaker. But whether you like it or not, currently MPs are development agents. So that is why you have to get somebody that will be able to stand in to lobby for the people. Because me, anywhere I go, I tell the people that they should vote for His Excellency John Dramani Mahama as our flag bearer. And I know that he is going to win the presidency. Should he win and become the president of Ghana, and me as an MP, there will be several opportunities in government that I can pull because of my connections in the party now to the people. And also in Secretary, also, it is an agricultural area. So most are in farming. We need to help our people. Then another thing is education. So I tell the people that should I become the MP and NDC win, we should get a scholarship that will help the needy by brilliant students. After all, the MPs get common fund. We should have a priority that for our common fund, we need to develop our people. So we are going to invest it in education. So we are setting up a scholarship for our people. For that, we are going to help people. And I've worked in the corporate industry. So having worked as a miner, as an engineer, I think that we can also solicit for some funds from the institutions that are benefiting from our land. Then we use that to help our people. But then we look at the welfare of the very people who even vote for us. You go to meet them and they're crying that we've voted NDC since 92. Nobody is looking away. What I'm telling them is that, look, should I become your MP? I will look your way because of you, I'm going to get a salary. Because of you, probably there are other things that I'm going to get as a benefit. Let us go back to the people. Let us give back. So, to me, it is about service to the people.
Right. There's a question I've been asking all aspirants. Your party has asked you all to sign a document before you become eligible to contest. This document says that you will subject yourself to the control of the party if you become an MP. Have you signed it?
I think it's yet to come to Western North, but should it come, I will sign it. Let me tell you, Kojo, even in church, when you go, even you're a church member, you can't do things the other way. The church has a doctrine that we all follow. So if you're in a group, you have to represent the group interests, and it must at all times supersede your individual interests. So
what about the interest of the constituents?
So I'm coming. I could go as an independent candidate. Maybe as an independent candidate, the people may love you, but you know what I mean? Immediately you determine to go on the ticket of the NDC, then at least you should abide by the dictates of the party. But you see,
so the question is quite clear. I want to know, will you represent your party's interest over your constituency's interest?
No, mostly the party's interests are same as the interest of the constituency. Look, for instance,
that is an unrealistic claim.
Kojo, let me just last one. Recently, some of our MPs voted for the ministers, and we are going around telling the Ghanaian people that looking at the economy we have now, we need to downsize the government. You are sending a signal to the Ghanaian people that should we win power, we will be able to do that. Then the MPs go to vote for them. Are you saying that the constituents didn't want the MPs to vote no? That is why I'm telling you that mostly...
You're picking one issue and asking me whether the constituents agree or not.
I'm just telling you...
But let me give you a practical reality. You are representing a constituency that has voted NPP twice.
Yes.
So that means that if you were to become their MP, you can be sure that a large number of the people you are representing are not NDC.
Yeah.
Okay. So then,
40%.
Very good. So there are likely to be some issues that come up in Parliament on which NDC's position, your party's position, may not necessarily align with every constituent's position. So the question is this: who do you represent in Parliament? Your party or your constituents?
You represent both, but primarily your party. You know why? Should you move from your party to another party, our constitution is clear. Your seat becomes vacant.
So your constituents must understand that once they vote for you, you are going there to work for your party.
To work for the party and for them.
But primarily your party.
I personally would say so because, like I told you, the constitutional provisions we have now makes it clear that should a person or an MP cross carpet, he loses his seat.
Okay. Well, as long as your constituents will understand that, you know.
No, we need to educate the people, let them appreciate the nuances in politics. Should we not always let the people know that this is what the politics is about, than just create a different impression other than the reality?
A number of NDC MPs recently, quite clearly voted to approve some ministers, contrary to the expectations of the party. What do you think caused that?
Let me first and foremost state my position that I disagree with those who voted yes. Okay. I still hold the view that the 87 ministers are on call for as it stands now, especially looking at the economic problems we find ourselves in. But I will also say that, you see, personally, I think it is about communication. It's about needless show of bravado. You see, the Adabraka in Parliament, if Adabraka want us to go this way, we also want to show them that we have our own way of doing our things. That is what I think. It could happen that it is not this case, but that is what I think. And it does appear that after this, there have been several consultations, and from where I stand and the information I was privy to, I knew that there were several consultations even before the voting. But you see, we are humans, and some tell us that this particular minister or the nominee is a friend. Probably before he even got to Parliament, he was one of the people who helped him to get there. At times, we are human. You can, but like I told you, we should always put the group interest ahead of our individual interests. So I disagree with that position, but I think that it is because of communication issues. I think people think that Adabraka want to control parliament, so we will not let them. Right. So we are showing them something small so that we, at the end of the day, we all come together and push forward.
Interesting. Well, I mean, before that incident, we know that the NDC leadership pulled quite a surprise when they shuffled leadership of parliament. What did you think of that?
Kojo, you here in Joy Multimedia, you've had several programs that you host. The next year, you move to another. So you see, our minority leadership was, for me, it was a privilege for them to have served the longer time they did, because after the election, the NPP that won the general election even made changes in their leadership. So some of us were expectant that others, at least there will be some few chess play, but that did not happen. They were given the opportunity to serve again. Service does not necessarily mean that you will be there permanently. So for me, the change was welcoming. And we need to change our direction, because if the Ghanaian people or our party people are complaining that we are always going to the side of the government, so there are people who today complain that between NDC and NPP, there is no difference. And they say so because they were thinking that with these numbers, we could do something, especially about bills and other loans that the Ghanaian people feel that this one is not going to do anything to help us. For instance, if you are bringing up e-levy and you have a minority leader, make a comment that bears semblance that he is agreeing to what the government wants. At times get to a point that when change like this comes, it brings hope.
So you think the new leadership is better than the previous?
No, I have not made that statement. I don't think so, because they just took offer. And for the people who left, we have seen their service. They are now serving. So you can only compare apples to apples. Now you just came and it is barely a year. How can you compare yourself to someone who has served about 6 years? So I can't do that comparison.
But do you think the leadership of your party did the right thing by
yes, I
choosing
think
these particular people to replace the ones who were there before?
I think so. I think so. Okay. Looking at the pedigree of the people who were selected at Ofosin, PhD, governments, and I think Comfort has been there, and Ahmed too was there. So at least there are two who are still in the system who will guide and help them achieve what we want as a party in Parliament.
All right. Let's look to the future and the two big races you have ahead of you. So if you are chosen to represent Sefirioso for the NDC, you think you have what it takes to beat Dr. Afriyie?
I think so. I think so. So you see, first and foremost, like I told you, the NDC is ever ready to come and rally behind any candidate that we will select to win our seat back. So I tell people that the Yosu seat is coming back home. But to do that, the people are looking out for a candidate who is a unifier, who is respectful, who has served the party well, has loyalty to the party, and is resourceful. You see, I tell people that a candidate should be resourceful, not necessarily that he should be a rich person, but he should have something that he will take to start, and people will believe in that candidate to help him win, and I am that candidate.
Right. I want to say a big thank you to you, Frank Asare Pedro, who is hoping to be NDC's Member of Parliament for Sefirioso, if he can win the two big battles ahead of him in the coming elections. We wish you the best of luck.
Kojo, thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure.
I can assure you that the next time I meet you here to discuss will be when I've won the parliamentary candidates election. Then the next will be when I become the MP for Sefirioso. Thank you.
Let's see how that unfolds. Good luck. Thank you so much for staying with us for yet another edition of The Pulse. You need to stay where you are because we're bringing some business news right after this. But of course, you can go to myjoyonline.com for all the latest news. My name is Kojo Yankson. It's been a pleasure. Let's do it again tomorrow.